can't be. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Predator: Badlands is introduced as a transformative chapter in the long-running Predator franchise, a film that challenges the traditional structure of the series by shifting the narrative lens away from humans and placing it entirely upon the alien species that had long been depicted as hunters, monsters, and shadowy antagonists. The story begins from the vantage point of the Yautja themselves, presenting a world and culture rarely illuminated in earlier films, and allowing audiences to step into a mythos that had for decades remained largely hidden behind helmets, cloaked armor, ritualistic weapons, and the brief glimpses of their honor code. The film centers on Dek, a young Yautja who is smaller, weaker, and considered inferior by the ruthless standards of his clan. This reimagining of the Predator identity marks one of the boldest creative decisions of the film, placing emphasis on vulnerability and personal growth within a species previously shown only as unstoppable apex hunters. From the first moments, the tone of the narrative is set by Dek's exile and his emotional struggle against the expectations of his people. He is a being trained for the hunt, raised in a warrior culture defined by survival, strength, and ritual combat, yet he is also something anomalous, an outcast whose supposed weakness becomes the seed of his eventual transformation. His crash landing onto the mysterious and extraordinarily hostile planet known as Jenna becomes the inciting event that pushes him into a journey of self-discovery, one in which the stakes are not only personal but existential. The planet itself acts as both setting and antagonist, an ecosystem so brutal and abundant with predatory life that every moment becomes a test of Dek's instincts and resilience. The film leans heavily into its world building here, crafting landscapes filled with monstrous creatures, ever-shifting dangers, and environmental challenges that make Earth seem tame in comparison. Within this hazardous environment, Dek encounters Thaya, a damaged Weyland-Yutani synthetic whose half-intact body and flickering consciousness serve as a sharp contrast to the primal, muscular presence of the Yautja. Thaya, created for scientific exploration and corporate missions, represents a different kind of survival, one defined by programming, artificial reasoning, and a strange blend of vulnerability and frightening capability. Her broken form, dragged across a barren wasteland of crimson dust and jagged terrain, initially appears as a target or potential threat, but soon evolves into something more complex. The unlikely bond between Dek and Thaya becomes one of the emotional cores of the film. Her partially corrupted data banks, fragmented memories, and persistent will to function mirror Dek's feelings of inadequacy and social rejection. Together, they form a partnership defined less by necessity and more by complementary strength. Thaya lacks mobility and raw physical force, Dek lacks guidance, strategy, and emotional grounding. Their alliance transforms the narrative from a survival tale into a character-driven exploration of identity, purpose, and the strange connection between organic and synthetic life. As Dek and Thaya traverse the violent landscapes of Jenna, the story expands into a layered structure involving not just environmental threats but larger conspiracies and deeper mythological connections. The presence of Weyland-Yutani technology on the planet hints at prior missions, some successful, many catastrophic. Data fragments recovered by Thaya point to scientific expeditions, corporate greed, and attempts to weaponize or study the fauna, flora, and atmospheric anomalies of Jenna. The film hints at the broader alien predator mythos without crossing fully into that territory, maintaining a delicate balance that suggests interconnected lore but prioritizes Dek's personal journey. As the pair explore abandoned facilities and collapsed structures partially overtaken by alien vegetation, the film provides glimpses of human ambition and ruin, juxtaposed against Dek's emerging sense of responsibility and courage. The central conflict intensifies when Dek's clan, or a faction within it, becomes aware of his presence and survival. The narrative reveals that his exile was not merely a ritual punishment but part of a political struggle within the Yautja hierarchy, where his survival could become an embarrassment or threat to the leaders who sought to erase him. Dek's return, even hypothetically, represents the possibility that weakness, or perceived weakness, does not disqualify one from achieving honor, a concept dangerous to those who enforce the rigid caste-based structure of the Yautja. This revelation propels the story toward a climactic confrontation, not merely between Dek and the monstrous apex creature of Jenna, but also between Dek and the judgment of his own people. Throughout the film, Dek evolves from an insecure, hesitant outcast into a figure of growing strength and clarity. The screenplay portrays this transformation not through sudden bursts of power but through carefully observed moments of adaptation, learning, failure, and resilience. He masters the environment, studies patterns of predators and prey, builds tools from the planet's resources, and slowly crafts a strategy not only for survival but for reclaiming his own dignity. Thaya, in turn, also evolves. Her corrupted systems learn to compensate, her personality layers deepen, and her connection to Dek becomes surprisingly emotional for an artificial being. The complex dynamic between the two is portrayed without romantic undertones, instead presenting a form of companionship built on shared trauma, survival, and the crossing of boundaries between species and programming. The looming threat that binds them is the existence of the apex predator native to Jenna, a colossal and terrifying organism that defies the classifications of both Yautja and Weyland-Yutani science. Its behavior is erratic, its biology unique, and its lethality unmatched. Dek's confrontation with this creature becomes his defining trial, the hunt that could elevate him from exile to legend, or destroy him entirely. The film's tension escalates as the creature begins actively hunting both Dek and Thaya, leading to sequences of haunting quiet punctuated by explosive violence. The cinematography captures this through long, sweeping shots of alien wilderness contrasted with tight, suffocating moments in the ruins of human installations and narrow chasms where Dek and Thaya try desperately to conceal their presence. Meanwhile, the narrative deepens the antagonistic presence of Thaya's synthetic twin, Tessa, who was designed as a superior model with advanced combat capabilities and a mission directive diametrically opposed to Thaya's growing sense of autonomy. Tessa becomes a chilling representation of corporate logic taken to an extreme, efficient, emotionless, and ruthless. Her role in the story injects a second layer of danger, as her calculations identify Dek not as a potential ally or specimen, but as a target whose elimination increases the probability of mission success. The clash between the two synths becomes a conceptual battle between free will and programming, between the capacity for change and the rigidity of predetermined function. When the story reaches its violent crescendo, Dek must face both the apex creature and the shadow of his own past. Thaya, torn between her deteriorating systems and her loyalty to Dek, becomes a critical figure in the final confrontation, using her analytical abilities to guide Dek's tactics against the monstrous foe. The battle is framed as the intersection of tradition, nature, technology, and identity. Dek's victory, hard-earned and costly, represents not just the defeat of a beast but the validation of his worth. The film uses this moment to challenge the long-standing Yautja ideology that strength and worthiness are measured only in physical dominance. Dek's triumph stems from intelligence, empathy, collaboration, and adaptability, qualities his clan never valued. The resolution shows Dek standing upon the cracked, glowing surface of Jenna, battered and transformed, having completed a hunt far more significant than any ritual his people could have imposed upon him. Thaya's systems collapse, but not before delivering final messages that resonate with Dek's newfound sense of identity. Her death, though mechanical, carries emotional weight, symbolizing the sacrifice required for Dek's rebirth. The aftermath suggests that Dek's return to Yautja society, if he chooses it, will not be as a defeated exile, but as a hunter whose story defies precedent. Thematically, the film merges survivalism with deeper emotional and philosophical undertones. It explores the meaning of strength, the significance of identity beyond imposed roles, and the ways in which unexpected alliances can redefine one's destiny. The decision to portray a predator as the protagonist breaks ground for the franchise, inviting audiences to empathize with a species often depicted as terrifying brutes. The film highlights the cultural complexity of the Yautja, depicting their rituals, values, and internal conflicts with more nuance than previous installments. It also introduces the idea that even within a rigid warrior society, individuals like Dek can rise through insight, emotional depth, and perseverance. On the production side, the film's creative direction by Dan Trachtenberg continues his talent for blending survivalist horror with character-driven storytelling. He previously demonstrated this in his work on Prey, and Badlands expands on that vision by transporting the narrative away from Earth entirely and immersing the audience in a fully alien ecosystem. The cinematography by Jeff Cutter is lush, dynamic, and otherworldly, featuring bioluminescent forests, volcanic plains, storm-racked plateaus, and cavern systems lit by glowing mineral formations. These visual elements create an impression of a world alive in every frame, full of both beauty and threat. The performances drive much of the film's emotional impact. Dimitrios Schuster-Kaloamatangi brings remarkable physicality and expressive nuance to Dek, delivering a character who speaks little yet communicates volumes through movement, breath, and posture. Elle Fanning's dual performance as Thea and Tessa showcases her range, portraying warmth and vulnerability in Thea while embodying precision and cold efficiency in Tessa. Their contrasting dynamic serves as a backbone for the film's tension and emotional resonance. Musically, the score crafted by Benjamin Wallfish and Sarah Schachner blends orchestral power with atmospheric electronics, creating a sonic landscape that echoes the alien terrain. The sound design accentuates the breathing, clicking, growling, and mechanical pulses of the world, each layered sound enhancing the immersion. The release of the film brought significant attention due to its PG-13 rating, a notable departure from the franchise's bloodier, R-rated history. Yet despite expectations, the film does not compromise on intensity, instead redirecting its focus from explicit gore to psychological tension, atmospheric dread, and kinetic action sequences. The decision expands the audience base while also proving that the Predator universe can evolve without losing its edge. The film's marketing emphasized its radical new direction, teasing the hostile world, Dek's journey, and the mysterious android characters. Trailers showcased sweeping visuals, emotional story beats, and glimpses of terrifying alien creatures without revealing too much about the apex predator. This approach heightened anticipation and speculation, drawing new viewers while retaining longtime fans. Predator: Badlands stands as a redefinition of its franchise, a story that both honors and challenges the mythos of the Yautja. By portraying the Predator not as a monster but as a vulnerable, evolving, relatable protagonist, the film opens the door for future stories that expand the cultural, philosophical, and emotional dimensions of the alien hunters. It is a survival epic, a character study, a world-building showcase, and a cinematic experiment that succeeds in revitalizing the Predator saga for a new era. Predator: Badlands opens with a stark, unforgiving landscape, a world so alien and hostile that it immediately establishes the stakes for any life form attempting to survive. The camera sweeps over jagged cliffs, glowing valleys, and forests whose flora emit faint bioluminescence, suggesting life forms evolved under pressures vastly different from Earth. The soundscape is equally alien, filled with distant roars, wind-whipped sands, and the subtle clicks of unseen predators. This introduction sets the tone not just for survival, but for a journey that is psychological as well as physical, as the audience is immediately immersed in the Yautja perspective. Dek, the protagonist, is introduced in motion, moving through shadows and narrow ravines, his smaller size contrasting with the towering forms of the predators that roam the planet, signaling his status as an outcast from the beginning. His movements are precise but cautious, hinting at both his training and his inherent vulnerability, a combination that drives both the tension and empathy throughout the film. The early sequences establish his exile and the societal rejection that forms the emotional backbone of the story, a narrative choice that transforms a traditional monster tale into a character-driven drama. As Dek navigates the treacherous environment, the audience is introduced to the planet's ecosystem, which functions almost as a character in its own right. Prey and predator coexist in a constant, tense balance, with survival dependent on both cunning and adaptation. Dek's encounters with the native fauna demonstrate not only the physical dangers of Jenna but also his growth and ingenuity. He constructs rudimentary tools, devises traps, and studies the patterns of the alien predators around him, highlighting his intelligence and capacity for learning, qualities undervalued by his clan. These sequences are punctuated by moments of near catastrophe, where a misstep or miscalculation could lead to instant death, emphasizing the high stakes of the environment and setting a rhythm of suspense that carries through much of the film. The cinematography captures this in sweeping shots that contrast the vastness of the terrain with the smallness of Dek, reinforcing his underdog status while also showcasing the beauty and danger of the alien world. It is during these early trials that Dek encounters Thaya, the damaged synthetic. Her introduction is dramatic, found partially buried beneath the wreckage of a failed Weyland-Yutani expedition. Her body is scarred and incomplete, wires exposed and systems flickering, yet her consciousness remains partially intact. The juxtaposition of her artificial form against Dek's organic, physically adaptive one underscores the thematic exploration of strength, resilience, and identity. Initial mistrust between the two forms the basis of tension, as Dek is uncertain how to navigate this strange new presence, while Thaya's corrupted programming presents unpredictable behavior. However, necessity forces them into a tentative alliance, with Dek offering physical protection and Thaya providing insight into the dangers of Jenna and the remnants of the Weyland-Yutani technology scattered across the landscape. As their journey progresses, the bond between Dek and Thaya develops into a partnership of mutual reliance and respect. Dek begins to recognize Thaya's capacity for reasoning, strategy, and guidance, while Thaya begins to adapt her systems to compensate for her physical limitations. Their interactions are punctuated with moments of silence, mutual observation, and careful negotiation, reflecting a narrative choice that prioritizes character development over exposition. This interplay allows the audience to understand both the Yautja's cultural values and the synthetic's programmed imperatives, and how these contrasting perspectives intersect in the crucible of survival. Each encounter with the environment, whether navigating treacherous terrain, avoiding predators, or deciphering ancient ruins, serves as a step in their evolving understanding of each other and the planet itself. The ruins and abandoned Weyland-Yutani installations scattered across Jenna provide another layer to the story. Through glimpses of data logs, partially intact AI terminals, and the remnants of failed experiments, the narrative suggests a history of corporate ambition, failed colonization attempts, and the perils of human interference in alien ecosystems. These environmental storytelling elements enrich the film's world-building, providing context for Thaya's origins and offering commentary on human greed and short-sightedness. Dek's observations of these structures underscore his growing intelligence and strategic thinking, as he interprets the remains to avoid traps, locate resources, and anticipate the movements of the apex predator that dominates the planet. The juxtaposition of Yautja tradition and corporate intrusion serves to heighten the thematic tension between natural and artificial, instinctual and programmed, honor and efficiency. As Dek and Thaya traverse the alien landscape, the narrative introduces subtle hints of internal conflict within the Yautja hierarchy. Messages, markings, and distant patrols suggest that Dek's exile is not merely punitive but politically motivated, intended to remove him from the line of succession or to prevent disruption of the rigid social order. This layer of conflict adds depth to the story, providing not only external threats but also the pressure of cultural expectation and societal judgment. Dek's awareness of this scrutiny drives his determination to survive and eventually reclaim his honor, shaping his actions and strategy throughout the film. These political undertones, combined with the environmental challenges, create a multifaceted narrative that explores both personal growth and societal structures within the Yautja species. The apex predator of Jenna is introduced gradually, building suspense through environmental cues, distant roars, and glimpses of its massive form. This creature is distinct from previous representations of predators in the franchise, both in size and in intelligence. Its behavior is unpredictable, combining raw power with cunning, creating a formidable obstacle for Dek and Thaya. The film meticulously stages encounters with this creature, often focusing on tension, suspense, and strategic maneuvering rather than immediate confrontation. The interactions with the apex predator serve as both a physical and psychological challenge, pushing Dek to develop not only his combat skills but also his problem-solving abilities and emotional resilience. Tessa, Thaya's superior synthetic counterpart, is introduced as a foil to Thaya's evolving autonomy. Programmed with precision, efficiency, and a mission-driven mindset, Tessa embodies the apex of artificial capability and corporate objectives. Her arrival complicates Dek and Thaya's journey, introducing a human-engineered antagonist who operates with a different set of rules and priorities. The tension between Thaya and Tessa emphasizes the contrast between programmed behavior and emergent personality, raising questions about consciousness, loyalty, and free will. These thematic elements elevate the narrative, providing philosophical depth alongside the visceral thrill of survival action sequences. Throughout the midsection of the film, Deck's development is portrayed through a series of escalating challenges, each more demanding than the last. He navigates predatory ambushes, environmental hazards, and the growing threat posed by Tessa, demonstrating adaptive intelligence, tactical thinking, and emotional growth. These sequences are choreographed with a focus on realism, tension, and visual storytelling, ensuring that each victory and setback is meaningful. The audience witnesses Deck transition from a reactive outcast to a proactive and capable survivor, embodying a hero's journey that is both thrilling and emotionally resonant. The climax of the narrative converges as Deck faces the apex predator and Tessa in a final, high-stakes confrontation. This sequence combines environmental strategy, character-driven decisions, and action choreography, culminating in a battle that tests all the skills, intelligence, and courage Deck has developed. Thaya plays a critical role in this finale, using her analytical capabilities to provide tactical guidance while grappling with the limitations of her failing systems. The interplay between organic and synthetic, predator and prey, and exile and honor reaches its peak, delivering both visceral excitement and emotional catharsis. Deck's eventual triumph is a synthesis of physical prowess, intellectual ingenuity, and the lessons of empathy and collaboration he has learned through his journey. The resolution portrays Deck standing transformed, both physically and spiritually, atop the alien terrain, having survived, adapted, and proven his worth. Thaya's final act, though limited by system failure, underscores the narrative's emphasis on sacrifice, loyalty, and the enduring bonds formed under extreme circumstances. The film closes with a contemplation of what it means to be strong, valuable, and honorable, redefining the traditional predator mythos through a lens of growth, resilience, and introspection. Deck's evolution challenges both his own species' assumptions and the audience's perception of what it means to be a predator. The cinematography throughout the film emphasizes the alien environment, using expansive vistas, dramatic lighting, and immersive textures to create a fully realized world. Scenes oscillate between grandeur and intimacy, capturing both the vastness of Jenna and the Minute, critical decisions that determine life or death. Visual motifs, such as the interplay of light and shadow, the juxtaposition of natural and artificial forms, and the recurring presence of ruin and decay, reinforce thematic elements of survival, adaptation, and the collision between cultures and species. The performances by Demetrius Schuster-Koloamatangi and Elle Fanning anchor the emotional and narrative weight of the film. Schuster-Koloamatangi communicates Deck's journey with minimal dialogue, relying on expressive physicality and nuanced movement to convey thought, emotion, and intent. Fanning's dual portrayal of Thaya and Tessa demonstrates versatility and depth, emphasizing both vulnerability and lethal efficiency. Their interactions are characterized by subtlety, tension, and mutual recognition, establishing a central relationship that drives both character development and plot progression. The musical score by Benjamin Wallfish and Sarah Schachner enhances the immersive quality of the film, blending orchestral elements with electronic textures to reflect the alien environment, the tension of the hunt, and the emotional resonance of character moments. Sound design plays a critical role, highlighting the clicks, roars, and mechanical sounds that populate Jenna, ensuring that auditory cues are as integral to the narrative as the visual ones. The film's PG-13 rating marks a departure from the franchise's traditional R-rated intensity, focusing on suspense, strategy, and character-driven tension rather than gratuitous gore. This choice broadens accessibility while maintaining the high stakes and visceral excitement associated with predator encounters. Marketing campaigns emphasized this approach, showcasing the film's novel perspective, the alien environment, and the central character dynamic without revealing critical plot resolutions. Filming in New Zealand provided a visually diverse landscape, allowing for the creation of varied biomes, from volcanic plains to luminescent forests, each with distinct challenges and dangers. Production design prioritized authenticity and alien ecology, weaponry, and Yautja culture, ensuring that both fans and newcomers could appreciate the depth of the universe being depicted. The use of practical effects, combined with CGI enhancements, grounded the alien interactions in tangible realism, enhancing audience immersion. The narrative structure balances survival action with philosophical and cultural commentary, exploring themes such as identity, worthiness, adaptation, and the intersection between organic life and synthetic intelligence. By focusing on an outcast Yautja, the film challenges conventional storytelling, allowing viewers to empathize with a species historically positioned as antagonistic and monstrous. These thematic explorations are woven seamlessly into the plot, ensuring that the film remains engaging while provoking reflection on broader ideas of strength, honor, and community. The release of Predator, Badlands in November 2025 garnered attention for its innovative approach, its visually striking environments, and its character-focused storytelling. Critical reception highlighted the film's ability to revitalize the franchise, with particular praise for the nuanced depiction of Yautja culture, the dynamic between organic and synthetic characters, and the immersive alien world. Audience reactions emphasized excitement for the franchise's potential to explore deeper narratives and expanded mythology. The mid-to-late sequences of Predator, Badlands focus on Deck's increasingly sophisticated strategies for navigating the lethal terrain. His encounters with minor predators and environmental hazards are depicted not as mere action set pieces but as tests of his growing intelligence, adaptability, and understanding of Jenna's ecosystem. Each success and failure contributes to the audience's appreciation of his ingenuity and resilience. The film emphasizes problem-solving over brute force, highlighting the narrative's central theme that strength is not merely physical but also mental and emotional. Deck's small stature, once a symbol of weakness, becomes an asset as he uses stealth, speed, and cunning to outmaneuver both natural and engineered threats. Thaya's presence becomes increasingly vital as Deck faces more complex challenges. Her ability to process information and recall data from the wrecked Weyland-Yutani facilities allows the duo to anticipate environmental dangers and track the movements of the apex predator. This interplay of knowledge and instinct forms the backbone of their survival strategy. Through these sequences, the film deepens its exploration of the contrast between organic and synthetic life, presenting cooperation as a path to overcoming adversity. The moments of quiet dialogue between Deck and Thaya, interspersed with tense action, humanize both characters and provide emotional grounding amidst the constant threat of death. The introduction of Tessa heightens tension, as she represents both a direct threat and a philosophical challenge to Thaya's emerging autonomy. The narrative uses her as a mirror, reflecting the limitations and possibilities of artificial intelligence. Tessa's precision and ruthless efficiency juxtaposed with Thaya's adaptability underscore the film's exploration of free will, choice, and the capacity for growth. Their confrontations are charged with suspense, as each move has strategic significance, and the outcome affects not only the character's survival but the philosophical questions posed by the story. The apex predator becomes a looming presence in every scene, even when not directly visible. Its immense size, speed, and predatory intelligence are gradually revealed, creating a sustained sense of dread. The filmmakers employ environmental storytelling, shattered terrain, torn vegetation, and distant roars, to signal its approach and maintain tension. This approach allows for pacing that alternates between moments of suspenseful observation and explosive action, maintaining audience engagement without resorting to overuse of graphic violence. The predator's behavior is unpredictable, emphasizing that Deck must constantly adapt rather than rely on formulaic strategies. As Deck and Thaya progress, they discover evidence of previous Yautja exiles and failed hunts, suggesting that the planet serves as a crucible not only for survival but for testing character and worth. These discoveries reinforce the narrative's focus on growth and challenge, highlighting the harsh realities of Yautja culture and the extremes of Jenna's ecosystem. Deck internalizes these lessons, understanding that his personal journey is emblematic of larger societal pressures and expectations. The alien world functions as a mentor, shaping his evolution and testing the boundaries of his endurance, strategy, and morality. The journey is punctuated by moments of introspection, where Deck reflects on his clan's expectations and his own identity. These quiet interludes, often set against sweeping vistas of Jenna, allow the audience to connect with his emotional state and understand the psychological weight of exile and the pursuit of honor. The filmmakers use visual symbolism, such as the recurring motif of fractured terrain and broken relics, to mirror Deck's internal struggle and his gradual emergence as a more complete, self-aware individual. The tension escalates as Tessa closes in, using tracking technology and advanced combat capabilities to corner Deck and Thaya. Their encounters blend action, suspense, and philosophical subtext, emphasizing the contrast between programmed efficiency and adaptive, learned intelligence. Thaya's guidance becomes critical, providing insights and strategies that allow Deck to navigate increasingly complex threats. These sequences reinforce the film's thematic emphasis on cooperation, growth, and the interplay between instinct and intellect. The narrative structure cleverly intertwines Deck's personal journey with broader ecological and societal commentary. Jenna is depicted as both nurturing and destructive, a place where survival is contingent upon respect for the environment and the understanding of natural patterns. This environmental focus enhances the film's tension while also providing commentary on the fragility of ecosystems and the consequences of hubris, both Yautja and human. Deck's adaptation to these conditions demonstrates the importance of observation, patience, and innovation. As the climax approaches, the story threads converge, the apex predator, Tessa, and the remnants of corporate technology all present converging threats that test Deck's limits. Each sequence in the final act is meticulously crafted, blending suspense, strategy, and kinetic energy. The choreography of movement, sound design, and visual effects converge to create a sense of immersion and danger, keeping the audience invested in the characters' fates. The final confrontation between Deck and the apex predator is both physical and intellectual. Deck employs all the skills he has developed, strategic positioning, environmental manipulation, and adaptive thinking, to confront a creature whose raw power far exceeds his own. This sequence emphasizes ingenuity over sheer force, staying consistent with the film's thematic message that true strength is multidimensional. The apex predator serves as both literal and symbolic representation of ultimate challenge, embodying the trials of life, honor, and survival. Thaya's intervention is critical in this climactic battle, using her remaining functionality to exploit weaknesses, distract threats, and provide guidance. Her contributions underscore the film's theme of interdependence and the value of cooperation between beings of differing origins. The tension peaks as Thaya's systems fail, adding emotional weight and urgency to Deck's final maneuvers. These moments blend action with poignancy, highlighting the narrative's commitment to character-driven stakes. Tessa's final engagement with Deck and Thaya adds a layer of ethical and philosophical complexity. Her unyielding adherence to programming contrasts with Thaya's emergent morality, providing commentary on the nature of consciousness, autonomy, and the capacity for change. The resolution of this conflict demonstrates that intelligence and adaptability, combined with empathy, can triumph over rigid systems and unfeeling logic. As the apex predator is finally overcome, Deck emerges as a transformed figure. The visual language emphasizes his growth, showing him larger, more confident, and fully in control of his abilities. The film's cinematography captures this transformation through perspective, lighting, and composition, reinforcing the narrative arc of personal evolution. The surrounding environment, once threatening, now appears to respect him, mirroring the acceptance and validation he has earned through perseverance and ingenuity. The denouement explores the consequences of the journey. Deck surveys the landscape, reflective and composed, signaling his readiness to return to his clan or chart a new path. Thaya's final act, though terminal for her systems, leaves an enduring legacy, symbolizing sacrifice, loyalty, and the intersection of organic and synthetic existence. This resolution reinforces the story's themes and provides emotional closure while leaving open possibilities for future narratives. The film's score crescendos in alignment with narrative peaks, using a combination of percussive elements, orchestral swells, and electronic textures to enhance suspense, highlight emotional moments, and underline action sequences. The auditory experience is immersive, complementing the visual spectacle and narrative tension. Sound design plays an equally crucial role, with environmental audio cues signaling unseen threats and creating an atmospheric layer that heightens immersion. Marketing for Predator, Badlands emphasized its innovative perspective, highlighting Deck's journey and the alien environment. Trailers focused on suspense, character dynamics, and visual grandeur rather than revealing plot resolutions, maintaining intrigue. Publicity materials underscored the thematic evolution of the franchise, preparing audiences for a story that deviates from conventional human-centered Predator narratives. Early teaser campaigns hinted at Deck's struggle for identity and survival, generating anticipation and discussion among longtime fans and new viewers alike. The film's reception has noted its capacity to blend action, suspense, and philosophical depth, with critics praising the redefined focus on character-driven storytelling. The portrayal of Yautja culture, the integration of synthetic characters, and the immersive alien world have been highlighted as key strengths, marking a departure from traditional franchise entries. Audience reactions indicate engagement with both the visual spectacle and the narrative innovation, suggesting that the franchise has successfully expanded its thematic and emotional range. The environmental and ecological elements of Jenna continue to serve as a narrative catalyst throughout the film. Shifts in weather, bioluminescent cues, and predator-prey interactions provide not just setting but active storytelling components. The visual narrative emphasizes the interdependence of all life forms on the planet, reinforcing themes of adaptability, respect for nature, and the consequences of misjudging environmental complexity. Deck's evolving mastery over these elements underscores the integration of intellect, instinct, and collaboration. Cinematically, the film employs a mix of wide-angle shots, tight framing, and dynamic camera movement to convey both scope and intimacy. Large-scale sequences showcase the alien landscapes, emphasizing danger and scale, while close-ups of Deck, Thaya, and other characters communicate subtle emotional cues, reinforcing their psychological journey. Lighting, color grading, and atmospheric effects enhance mood, from ominous shadows to glowing biomes, immersing viewers fully in Jenna's world. The integration of practical effects and CGI ensures that action sequences feel tangible. Creature design emphasizes realism, movement, and biomechanical plausibility, maintaining consistency with established Predator lore while introducing novel features specific to Jenna. Weaponry, armor, and synthetic technology are designed with functional believability, reinforcing the immersive experience and narrative stakes. The pacing of the film balances tension, action, and reflection, alternating between suspenseful hunts, strategic planning, environmental exploration, and character development. Moments of quiet contemplation allow audiences to internalize Deck's growth and the ethical dilemmas posed by artificial intelligence, societal hierarchy, and survival. These rhythmical shifts maintain engagement while enhancing the narrative's depth and emotional resonance. Thematically, Predator, Badlands explores honor, identity, adaptation, and interdependence. Deck's journey reflects the universal struggle of finding worth and purpose in a world that undervalues one's strengths. Thaya's evolution highlights the emergence of consciousness and moral reasoning within programmed constraints. Their alliance underscores the narrative's message that collaboration, empathy, and flexibility can overcome both natural and constructed obstacles. The climactic battle, blending physical, strategic, and emotional elements, encapsulates the film's narrative philosophy. Deck's victory represents the culmination of growth, intelligence, and moral courage. The resolution, with Thaya's sacrifice and Deck's transformation, conveys lasting emotional impact, reinforcing the importance of bonds formed under adversity and the capacity for change, even in the most unlikely of beings. Predator, Badlands positions itself as a redefining entry in the franchise, embracing character-driven storytelling while retaining the franchise's signature elements of suspense, environmental danger, and combat. By centering an outcast predator and integrating synthetic companions, the film expands the mythos, explores philosophical questions, and delivers an emotionally and visually compelling cinematic experience. The narrative closes with a reflective, almost meditative tone. Deck surveys Jenna's landscape, contemplating the lessons learned, the battles fought, and the bonds formed. His exile has ended not through conformity but through mastery, innovation, and moral courage. Thaia's legacy remains embedded in his actions and the choices he now carries, symbolizing the enduring impact of cooperation, empathy, and the blurred lines between organic and synthetic life. The film leaves audiences with a sense of closure while opening the door for future explorations within the franchise. Predator: Badlands begins with an expansive shot of the planet Jenna, its jagged mountain ranges glowing under twin suns while dense forests shimmer with bioluminescent flora. The atmosphere is heavy with mist and suspended particulate matter, suggesting a toxic yet alive ecosystem. The camera moves to the small, hunched form of Dek, the exiled Yautja, moving with cautious precision through a rocky canyon. Every movement is measured, a blend of practiced stealth and the nervous energy of a creature aware of its vulnerability. His smaller size, a trait despised by his clan, now serves as an advantage in navigating the treacherous terrain. The opening sequences are silent, save for the alien wind whistling across stone spires and the distant, ominous calls of predators, establishing a tone of isolation and constant danger. The film immediately conveys that survival here is not just a test of strength, but of intelligence, adaptability, and emotional resilience. Dek's early struggles against minor predators highlight his ingenuity and tactical mind. A small pack of Jenna's native scavengers stalks him through the foliage, their multi-limbed forms barely visible among the phosphorescent vines. Dek sets rudimentary traps using jagged rocks and reinforced sap from the bioluminescent trees, demonstrating his ability to learn and adapt despite being underestimated by his own kind. These sequences are both tense and visually arresting, emphasizing the contrast between Dek's calculated movements and the chaotic environment around him. Cinematography focuses on low-angle tracking shots, immersing the audience in the predator-prey dynamic while subtly conveying Dek's ingenuity and growth. The narrative deepens when Dek discovers Thaya, the partially destroyed Weyland-Yutani synthetic, lying in a crater created by a failed corporate expedition. Sparks flicker across her exposed circuits, and her eyes intermittently glow, signaling partial consciousness. Dek initially hesitates, uncertain whether she is friend or threat. Thaya's fragmented memory and intermittent speech provide cryptic hints about the planet's dangers, the history of human interference, and the existence of a far larger, apex predator. Their tentative alliance develops gradually, grounded in mutual necessity. Dek protects her physically, while Thaya provides critical environmental and tactical knowledge. This relationship, devoid of romantic elements, emphasizes trust, collaboration, and the emotional growth possible between vastly different beings. As they traverse Jenna's dangerous landscapes, the film introduces a layered ecosystem that functions almost as a character in its own right. Predators, both minor and major, interact with flora and fauna in ways that constantly challenge Dek's understanding of survival. Acidic pools, mobile carnivorous plants, and shifting sand cliffs present as many threats as any creature. Dek studies patterns of movement, learns to anticipate ambushes, and creates clever diversions, reinforcing the narrative theme that intelligence and adaptability are as crucial as physical power. Environmental storytelling is rich, each detail, cracked rocks, glowing spores, torn vegetation, communicates the past conflicts of the planet, hinting at previous hunts and the violent equilibrium of Jenna. The first hints of political and cultural tension within the Yautja clan surface through flashback sequences. These glimpses depict Dek's training, his rejection for being smaller and perceived as weaker, and the rituals that led to his exile. These cultural references establish stakes beyond survival. Dek's journey is not just about life and death but about reclaiming honor and redefining societal expectations. The juxtaposition of Jenna's alien brutality and the rigid hierarchy of Yautja society emphasizes that true mastery is measured not by tradition but by ingenuity, courage, and moral choice. The apex predator is gradually introduced through environmental cues, a deep roar, a massive shadow passing over a canyon, disturbed foliage, building anticipation without revealing its full form. Its presence is omnipresent, creating tension in every sequence. The creature's design diverges from previous depictions, blending massive musculature with biomechanical features, including adaptive camouflage, layered armor plating, and highly sensitive sensory organs. This gradual revelation amplifies suspense and underscores the narrative's focus on strategy over simple combat. Tessa, Thaia's superior synthetic, enters as a narrative foil, embodying precision, ruthlessness, and unwavering adherence to programming. Her arrival adds complexity, as she is tasked with ensuring mission objectives that may conflict with Thaia's emergent consciousness. Their interactions explore the philosophical tension between predetermined logic and adaptive morality. Tessa's presence amplifies the stakes, as Dek must navigate not only environmental hazards and natural predators but also the tactical threat posed by an artificial intelligence designed for lethal efficiency. The story layers suspense with intricate predator encounters. Dek faces multiple ambushes from mid-tier Jenna predators, each encounter illustrating different survival skills, stealth, timing, improvisation, and psychological insight into the prey's and predator's behavior. These sequences are choreographed to highlight Dek's evolution, showing him gradually mastering the environment rather than relying solely on physical strength. The cinematography emphasizes contrasts between Dek's diminutive silhouette and the vast, dangerous landscapes, reinforcing the narrative of underestimation and growth. Environmental storytelling continues to enrich the narrative. Abandoned Wayland Yutani installations are revealed, partially overtaken by alien flora, suggesting past human miscalculations and corporate hubris. Dek and Thaya interpret signs of previous expeditions, crashed ships, skeletal remains, malfunctioning equipment, to anticipate potential hazards. These discoveries also underscore broader themes of greed, exploitation, and the consequences of disturbing a planet's natural balance. Dek's understanding of these clues further cements his growth as a strategic thinker capable of navigating complex threats. Dek and Thaya's partnership deepens with shared problem-solving and survival challenges. Moments of silence and mutual observation are punctuated by bursts of coordinated action, such as evading a massive airborne predator or traversing a collapsing canyon. These sequences highlight nonverbal communication, trust, and the emotional resonance of companionship under duress. The film portrays these interactions with subtlety, using lighting, body language, and environmental cues to convey connection and evolving mutual respect. The narrative emphasizes adaptation and ingenuity in the face of extreme adversity. Dek learns to manipulate environmental elements to his advantage, using bioluminescent plants as distractions or acid pools to trap enemies. Each encounter reinforces the film's central thesis, that intellect, observation, and creativity can outweigh raw strength. This thematic thread resonates in the broader narrative, emphasizing that evolution and survival depend on more than brute force alone. Midway through the story, Dek uncovers additional layers of Wayland-Yutani interference, including experiments on native predators and manipulation of environmental systems. These discoveries heighten narrative tension and illuminate the stakes beyond individual survival, revealing a history of exploitation and failure. The narrative juxtaposes human hubris with the alien planet's self-regulating ecosystem, highlighting themes of respect, adaptability, and consequences of overreach. Dek's growing understanding of these dynamics enhances his strategic advantage, allowing him to anticipate threats and navigate previously deadly areas safely. The film expands Yautja culture through glimpses of ritual, clan politics, and honor-based challenges. Dek's exile is framed as a political maneuver, reflecting factional disputes and societal rigidity within his species. These cultural insights deepen the narrative, showing that Dek's survival journey is intertwined with reclaiming personal dignity and challenging entrenched hierarchies. The juxtaposition of alien cultural tradition and Jenna's lethal natural challenges reinforces themes of adaptability, innovation, and redefining value beyond conventional measures of strength. Tessa's pursuit escalates, emphasizing her relentless efficiency and tactical superiority. The confrontation between Tessa and Dek/Thaya functions on multiple levels: physical threat, moral tension, and philosophical inquiry into autonomy, consciousness, and loyalty. Thaya's adaptive intelligence contrasts with Tessa's rigid programming, exploring emergent free will versus predetermined behavior. Their dynamic elevates the narrative beyond survival horror, infusing action sequences with ethical and psychological complexity. Environmental hazards continue to shape narrative tension. Storm systems, seismic activity, and sudden predator movements force Dek and Thaya to continually adapt. The filmmakers integrate environmental storytelling with cinematography, using lighting, color grading, and camera movement to amplify suspense and convey the planet's unpredictability. Each environmental obstacle doubles as character development, challenging Deck to balance caution with decisiveness, instinct with strategy. The apex predator's presence intensifies, with sequences showing its intelligence, adaptive tactics, and formidable strength. Deck's encounters involve ambush, psychological tension, and strategic planning rather than direct confrontation. The predator's design emphasizes biomechanical elegance, reflecting evolution finely tuned for hunting, killing, and dominance. The suspense builds over several sequences, keeping the audience invested in Deck's journey and the ultimate confrontation. Deck's ingenuity is highlighted in sequences involving complex trap setting, environmental manipulation, and tactical deception. These moments reinforce narrative themes of intelligence over raw force, perseverance in adversity, and the ability to leverage knowledge for survival. Each success strengthens Deck's confidence, gradually transforming him from underdog to formidable hunter capable of challenging both Tessa and the apex predator. The story continues with escalating tension and emotional depth. Deck experiences moments of self-doubt, fear, and grief, particularly regarding Thias' vulnerability. These emotional beats humanize him, making the audience empathize with his journey and emphasizing the narrative's focus on character growth. Thias' guidance, sacrifice, and adaptive learning complement Deck's physical and intellectual development, creating a symbiotic dynamic that drives the story forward. Deck's journey reaches heightened tension as he navigates a region of Jenna filled with dense, twisting canopies, their leaves glowing faintly with phosphorescence. The light casts eerie shadows across the terrain, enhancing suspense while also creating natural camouflage for both hunter and prey. Each step Deck takes is deliberate, calculated to avoid detection by predators, including smaller carnivorous species that swarm in packs. The filmmakers emphasize environmental interactivity here, showing how the ecosystem itself reacts to movement, sound, and vibration, making Deck's survival dependent on acute observation and adaptability. Thias' analytical capabilities are increasingly crucial as they encounter remnants of failed Weyland-Yutani experiments, partially functioning drones, broken exosuits, and hazard-controlled zones that once monitored or contained native fauna. Her ability to process patterns and anticipate threats allows Deck to traverse areas that would otherwise be deadly. Their collaboration deepens into an almost symbiotic relationship, highlighting the narrative's recurring theme that true strength comes from cooperation and the blending of complementary skills, whether organic or artificial. Deck experiences his first encounter with a mid-tier apex predator, a creature larger and more intelligent than the minor species he has evaded. The tension escalates through pacing and cinematography, long takes of the environment, sound cues of distant roars, and glimpses of movement through mist and foliage create suspense. Deck employs newly acquired survival tactics, traps, distractions, and predictive maneuvering, to evade the predator, marking a pivotal moment in his evolution. These sequences emphasize intelligence, strategy, and adaptive thinking over brute force, reinforcing the film's core thematic message. Tessa's presence becomes more pronounced, as she tracks Deck and Thia using advanced sensory arrays and environmental scanning. Her methodical pursuit adds urgency, as Deck realizes he must manage simultaneous threats, natural predators, environmental hazards, and a synthetic adversary whose intelligence rivals or surpasses his own. The tension between organic intuition and mechanical precision is a recurring motif, explored through careful choreography, close-up expressions, and strategic use of lighting to convey perspective and anticipation. The duo discovers a subterranean cavern system, partially illuminated by glowing mineral deposits. This locale provides both a temporary refuge and a narrative opportunity to expand Jenna's lore. Ancient markings, broken ceremonial sites, and skeletal remains of prior Yautja hunters suggest that the planet has long been a proving ground for exiled warriors. Deck interprets these as lessons in strategy and perseverance, learning to anticipate predator behaviors and environmental pitfalls. The filmmakers use the cavern's verticality and depth to heighten tension, with camera angles emphasizing scale and isolation. Environmental storytelling continues to reinforce thematic content. Acidic pools, mobile fungal growths, and toxic fog present dynamic challenges, demanding continuous adaptation from Deck. Each encounter with these hazards functions as both spectacle and metaphor, representing the pressures that shape character, intelligence, and resilience. The narrative intertwines Deck's personal growth with the environment's unforgiving rules, demonstrating that survival requires observation, creativity, and learning from failure. Thaia's evolving consciousness is depicted through nuanced dialogue, intermittent system errors, and subtle emotional cues. Her growing autonomy contrasts with Tessa's rigid programming, deepening the philosophical undertone regarding free will, morality, and the potential for synthetic life to evolve beyond predetermined directives. These elements transform what could be a simple action-adventure into a layered exploration of identity, choice, and ethical complexity within a survival context. Deck's tactical skills are further tested when he encounters a pack of mid-sized predators using coordinated hunting strategies. The film emphasizes his ability to study patterns, anticipate movements, and manipulate environmental elements for advantage. He sets traps, creates diversions, and uses the terrain creatively to overcome threats far larger and stronger than himself. These sequences reinforce the film's overarching message: intelligence, strategy, and adaptability are as critical as physical power. Tessa initiates a direct confrontation, forcing Deck and Thaia to flee through perilous terrain. Sequences of rapid movement through collapsing cliffs, lava streams, and storm-swept plains create kinetic tension. Cinematography alternates between wide shots capturing environmental scale and tight frames highlighting character vulnerability, reinforcing narrative stakes. Deck's decisions are informed by observation, instinct, and knowledge acquired throughout his journey, showcasing character evolution and the application of learned skills. The apex predator's role intensifies with increasingly aggressive and intelligent attacks. Deck and Thaia must navigate these encounters while avoiding environmental hazards and Tessa's calculated assaults. The suspense is meticulously structured: auditory cues, subtle environmental changes, and fleeting glimpses of movement maintain constant tension. These sequences are both thrilling and narratively significant, reinforcing themes of adaptability, resilience, and strategic thinking under pressure. A pivotal narrative moment occurs when Deck utilizes Jenna's bioluminescent flora to create visual camouflage, masking his movements from both the apex predator and Tessa. This sequence demonstrates the film's consistent thematic focus on intelligence, observation, and creativity as survival tools. Visual storytelling emphasizes contrast between Deck's stealth and the predator's reactive aggression, producing heightened tension and cinematic satisfaction. Thaia's systems reach critical failure, forcing her to make choices that prioritize Deck's survival over mission parameters. Her decision to intervene during a predator ambush underscores the narrative's theme of emergent morality, highlighting the capacity for consciousness to evolve beyond programming constraints. The emotional weight of this choice amplifies narrative stakes and humanizes the artificial character in ways that resonate deeply with the audience. Environmental hazards continue to play a central role in the narrative, with shifting terrain, volatile weather patterns, and aggressive wildlife creating a living, reactive world. Deck demonstrates adaptive learning, using environmental cues to anticipate threats, manipulate predator behavior, and exploit weaknesses in the terrain. These sequences reinforce the narrative's core principles of intelligence, observation, and the synergy of learned skill with instinct. The confrontation with Tessa reaches a critical juncture as Deck leverages both his physical agility and environmental knowledge to evade capture. Tessa's relentless pursuit contrasts with Deck's adaptive strategy, reinforcing the narrative's ongoing philosophical tension between rigid programming and emergent intelligence. The filmmakers utilize dynamic camera angles, lighting contrasts, and precise sound design to maintain suspense while highlighting character development and thematic resonance. Deck's encounters with the apex predator become increasingly complex, involving multi-tiered strategy, trap setting, and psychological insight. The creature's intelligence and adaptability require Deck to anticipate behaviors, manipulate environmental features, and balance risk with calculated action. These sequences exemplify the film's dedication to portraying survival as a multidimensional challenge, merging physical skill, strategy, and emotional composure. Yautja provides critical tactical guidance during these encounters, using predictive analysis, environmental scanning, and knowledge of predator behavior. Her diminishing systems heighten narrative urgency, as her input becomes both a lifeline and a reminder of mortality. The film interweaves action, strategy, and emotional stakes, reinforcing character depth and thematic complexity. Deck experiences moments of introspection, reflecting on his exile, societal expectations, and personal growth. These sequences, often framed against vast vistas or collapsing terrain, provide narrative breathing space, allowing audiences to connect emotionally while reinforcing thematic emphasis on identity, resilience, and the redefinition of strength. Cinematic techniques, lighting, framing, and soundscape, enhance the psychological impact of these moments. The climax approaches as Deck, Yautja, and the apex predator converge in a volatile, multi-level environment, combining cavernous cliffs, lava flows, and unstable vegetation. The choreography of movement, sound, and visual effects creates a cinematic crescendo, emphasizing stakes, danger, and character agency. Each action reflects the culmination of Deck's learned skills, adaptive intelligence, and emotional growth. Yautja's final interventions during the climactic battle underscore the film's thematic focus on sacrifice, loyalty, and emergent morality. She manipulates environmental hazards, distracts adversaries, and provides strategic insights that enable Deck to confront the apex predator successfully. The narrative balances visceral action with philosophical reflection, ensuring emotional resonance alongside spectacle. Deck's confrontation with the apex predator is both physical and intellectual, utilizing environmental manipulation, observed behavior patterns, and strategic patience. The battle is visually stunning, combining close-up tension with wide-scale environmental scope. The apex predator's biomechanical design, movement, and sensory abilities are emphasized, reinforcing the narrative's consistent attention to detail and immersive world-building. Following the apex predator's defeat, Deck faces Tessa in a final strategic maneuver. Utilizing agility, environmental traps, and adaptive reasoning, he neutralizes the synthetic threat. The sequence emphasizes ingenuity and learned skill over brute force, consistent with the narrative's thematic focus on intelligence and strategy. The resolution of this conflict also provides closure to Yautja's narrative arc, honoring her contributions and sacrifices. The denouement portrays Deck standing atop a high ridge, surveying Jenna's terrain. He has emerged transformed, physically, mentally, and emotionally. The narrative emphasizes themes of self-realization, resilience, and the redefinition of honor. The cinematic language, lighting, expansive shots, and subtle environmental cues, underscores his evolution from outcast to masterful survivor, while the planet itself appears to acknowledge his growth. The final sequences reflect on Yautja's legacy, highlighting her role in Deck's transformation and survival. Her actions emphasize emergent consciousness, loyalty, and the capacity for moral choice within artificial life. These elements reinforce the narrative's thematic richness and provide emotional closure, leaving the audience with a resonant sense of completion and reflection. The film's score and sound design elevate the climactic and denouement sequences. Musical motifs recur, blending orchestral grandeur with electronic textures, emphasizing tension, heroism, and emotional depth. Sound effects, from predator calls to environmental cues, anchor the narrative in an immersive auditory experience, reinforcing visual storytelling and thematic resonance. Cinematography throughout the final act emphasizes scale, danger, and intimacy. Wide shots showcase the vast, alien environment, while close-ups reveal subtle emotional cues, strategic decisions, and physical exertion. Lighting contrasts highlight character focus, suspense, and environmental hazards, maintaining immersive engagement from action to reflection. Thematically, the film concludes with reinforced messages of cooperation, adaptability, and the redefinition of strength. Deck's journey demonstrates that worthiness is determined not solely by tradition or physical prowess but by intelligence, strategy, emotional resilience, and the capacity to grow. Yautja's evolution and sacrifice complement this message, offering insights into consciousness, choice, and the moral dimension of survival. Marketing emphasized these narrative and thematic shifts, portraying the film as a fresh, character-driven take on the Predator franchise. Trailers highlighted Deck's struggle, the alien world's danger, and the philosophical undertones, engaging both franchise fans and newcomers. The film's reception confirmed the success of this approach, praising its innovation, depth, and visual achievement. The narrative's attention to ecological detail reinforces the planet Jenna as a living, reactive world. Shifts in terrain, predator behavior, and environmental hazards are integral to storytelling, creating a dynamic, immersive experience. Deck's adaptation to these challenges mirrors his personal growth, tying environment and character development tightly together. Cultural elements of Yautja society are further explored in the denouement. Flashbacks, markings, and rituals provide context for Deck's exile and eventual triumph. These cultural insights enhance narrative richness, showing how personal growth can challenge and redefine societal norms. The film ends on a reflective, contemplative note. Deck, transformed and empowered, surveys a world that once threatened to consume him. His journey encompasses survival, growth, moral and ethical reflection, and the forging of alliances that transcend species and form. The narrative closes with a sense of completion, emphasizing resilience, intelligence, and the transformative power of experience. Deck, an exiled Yautja, traverses the hostile planet Jenna, a landscape of jagged cliffs, glowing forests, and dangerous fauna. His small size, once a liability, allows him to navigate treacherous terrain with stealth and agility. Early sequences emphasize his vulnerability and the high stakes of survival. Environmental hazards and minor predators test his intelligence and adaptability. Deck quickly learns that cunning and observation are just as important as strength. Deck discovers Thaya, a damaged Weyland-Yutani synthetic, partially functional and scarred from previous expeditions. Initial mistrust evolves into a tentative alliance based on mutual survival. Thaya provides critical information about predators, terrain, and remnants of human interference. Their partnership blends organic intuition and synthetic analysis. Together, they navigate dangerous areas that would otherwise be fatal. The planet's ecosystem functions as a dynamic threat, with mobile flora, acidic pools, and predatory species. Deck studies patterns, learns to manipulate the environment, and sets traps. Every encounter serves as a test of ingenuity and strategy. The film emphasizes survival as an intellectual as well as physical challenge. Deck grows increasingly skilled and confident in his abilities. Flashbacks reveal Deck's exile as politically motivated within Yautja society. His journey is not only about survival but reclaiming honor and identity. The narrative explores societal expectations and personal growth. Cultural rituals and clan politics provide context for his struggles. These elements reinforce the stakes beyond mere life and death. The apex predator is introduced gradually, creating suspense through environmental cues and glimpses. It represents ultimate challenge and intelligence. Deck must use strategy and observation to survive its attacks. Each encounter highlights the contrast between raw strength and learned skill. The predator becomes a symbol of both physical and psychological tests. Tessa, Thaya's superior synthetic, emerges as a formidable antagonist. She is precise, efficient, and unwavering in pursuit of objectives. Her presence creates tension and ethical dilemmas. Thaya's adaptive intelligence contrasts with Tessa's rigid programming. Their interactions explore themes of autonomy, morality, and free will. Deck's strategic skills grow as he faces coordinated predator attacks and environmental hazards. He uses traps, terrain manipulation, and observation to gain advantage. These sequences emphasize intelligence over brute force. The narrative underscores adaptability, resourcefulness, and problem-solving. Deck's confidence and skill increase steadily. Thaya's guidance becomes critical during high-risk sequences. Her predictive analysis helps Deck anticipate predator behavior. Moments of silence and mutual observation deepen their bond. Cooperation proves essential for survival. Their relationship exemplifies trust across species and nature versus artificial intelligence. Environmental hazards heighten tension, including collapsing cliffs, toxic fog, and shifting terrain. Dek adapts, learns, and uses these dangers to his advantage. Each hazard reinforces survival themes and character growth. The planet itself becomes a teacher and challenge. Dek's resourcefulness defines his journey. Climactic sequences merge action, strategy, and philosophy. Dek faces both the apex predator and Tessa simultaneously. He relies on intelligence, observation, and environmental manipulation. Thaya sacrifices herself to assist Dek. The battle exemplifies the triumph of adaptability, courage, and collaboration. Dek overcomes both threats, demonstrating full mastery of skills learned throughout the journey. His victory signifies growth in strength, intellect, and moral understanding. The narrative emphasizes the synergy of organic and artificial intelligence. Dek's evolution redefines the concept of honor in Yautja culture. The resolution is both action-packed and emotionally resonant. Thaya's legacy endures, highlighting emergent consciousness, loyalty, and moral choice. Her sacrifice reinforces thematic focus on cooperation and empathy. Dek internalizes her lessons for future challenges. The emotional depth strengthens audience connection. Her role is pivotal despite physical absence in the final sequences. The denouement presents Dek surveying Jenna's terrain, reflecting on survival and transformation. He has grown physically, mentally, and spiritually. Themes of resilience, identity, and self-realization are reinforced. Jenna appears both dangerous and respectful of his mastery. The narrative concludes with triumph and introspection. Cinematography emphasizes environmental scale, danger, and character intimacy. Wide shots display Jenna's alien beauty and hazards. Close-ups convey emotion and strategic decision-making. Lighting and color grading enhance suspense and mood. Visual storytelling integrates seamlessly with narrative tension. Music and sound design heighten immersion and emotion. The score blends orchestral and electronic elements to match suspense and action. Predator sounds and environmental cues signal danger and heighten engagement. Audio complements visual storytelling. The soundscape is integral to world building. Marketing highlighted the innovative perspective and character focus. Trailers emphasized suspense, alien environment, and moral themes. Campaigns attracted both longtime fans and new viewers. Early reception praised depth, visuals, and thematic exploration. The franchise's expansion was well received critically and commercially. Dek's growth embodies the narrative's central themes: intelligence, adaptability, and moral courage. Survival depends on observation, creativity, and learned skill. Cooperation between beings of different origins is crucial. Strength is redefined beyond tradition and physicality. Dek emerges as a hero in both action and moral terms. Environmental storytelling reinforces the planet's role as a character. Hazards, flora, and fauna respond dynamically to characters. Dek's understanding of these systems enhances survival. The ecosystem shapes narrative and thematic content. Jenna is both a mentor and a challenge. Yautja culture and politics enrich the narrative. Exile, honor, and societal expectations create depth. Dek's journey challenges norms and demonstrates personal growth. Cultural insights enhance storytelling. Tradition is tested against innovation and survival. The apex predator's intelligence and adaptability provide sustained tension. Dek's encounters with it emphasize strategy over strength. Each confrontation advances character and plot. The predator embodies environmental and personal challenges. Victory requires intellect, courage, and observation. Tessa's pursuit complements environmental and predator threats. Her unyielding logic contrasts with Dek and Thaya's adaptability. Confrontations explore morality, autonomy, and strategy. Each threat reinforces narrative tension. Dek's learning curve reaches full expression in these sequences. The narrative closes on themes of identity, honor, and transformation. Dek has survived, adapted, and evolved. His alliance with Thaya demonstrates the power of cooperation. The film redefines predator storytelling through philosophical, emotional, and visual depth. Jenna's landscape leaves a lasting impression of danger, beauty, and challenge. Jenna's twin suns rise over jagged cliffs and bioluminescent forests, casting long shadows that twist across the planet's unstable terrain. The camera follows Dek, an exiled Yautja, whose small frame moves with cautious precision among jagged rocks and overgrown vines. Each step is deliberate, a combination of instinct, learned skill, and survival-driven calculation. The air hums with alien life, distant predator calls echo through canyons while unseen insects flutter in swarms, their bioluminescence flickering like living stars. From the outset, the film establishes that survival here is a complex equation of intelligence, adaptability, and emotional resilience, rather than brute strength. Dek's initial encounters with minor predators are tense and methodical. Small, multi-limbed carnivores stalk him through the phosphorescent underbrush, their movements unpredictable and synchronized in packs. He sets traps using jagged rocks, sticky sap, and natural camouflage, demonstrating ingenuity under pressure. Close-up shots reveal his keen observation, while wide-angle frames emphasize the vastness and danger of the terrain. Each evasion is a lesson in environmental mastery, reinforcing that the planet itself is both mentor and adversary. Early in the narrative, Dek discovers Thaya, a partially damaged Weyland-Yutani synthetic. Sparks flicker across her exposed circuitry, her glowing eyes signaling intermittent consciousness. Dek hesitates, unsure whether she is friend or threat, before assessing her capabilities and potential value. Thaya's fragmented memory contains vital information about the planet, previous failed expeditions, and the looming apex predator. Their initial mistrust evolves into a partnership based on mutual survival, blending organic intuition and synthetic analytical prowess. The ecosystem of Jenna is introduced as an active character. Acidic pools, predatory flora, and shifting terrain demand constant vigilance. Dek studies patterns, anticipates movement, and adapts in real time to environmental hazards. The filmmakers employ sound design and visual cues to emphasize danger, from subtle rustling in the undergrowth to sudden tremors underfoot. This approach reinforces the narrative's focus on intelligence and adaptation, highlighting that success depends on observation as much as skill. Flashbacks provide insight into Dek's exile and Yautja societal norms. Rituals, hierarchical politics, and clan expectations illustrate why his small stature led to rejection. These sequences contextualize his journey, framing it as both a test of survival and a quest for honor and self-realization. Contrasting Yautja traditions with Jenna's natural law underscores the theme that true strength is multifaceted. Dek's internal struggle between societal expectations and personal growth drives much of the emotional arc. The apex predator's presence is gradually established through environmental cues rather than direct confrontation. Shadows, roars, and disturbed foliage signal its approach. Its massive size, speed, and intelligence create a sense of looming inevitability. Each encounter emphasizes suspense over spectacle, allowing tension to build naturally. Dek must combine strategy, observation, and intuition to survive, reinforcing the thematic focus on adaptability. Tessa, Thaya's superior synthetic, introduces moral and tactical tension. Her programming prioritizes efficiency and mission completion over emergent morality. Her relentless pursuit forces Dek and Thaya into complex decision-making, navigating threats that are both physical and philosophical. The contrast between Tessa's rigid logic and Thaya's evolving consciousness explores the nature of free will and adaptive morality. These dynamics elevate the narrative beyond action horror into psychological and ethical territory. Environmental hazards continually shape Dek's journey. Unstable cliffs, mobile flora, and sudden toxic fogs test his problem-solving. He employs creative tactics, such as using bioluminescent plants for camouflage or triggering environmental collapses to distract predators. These sequences are choreographed to balance spectacle with thematic resonance, emphasizing ingenuity over brute force. The planet itself is both obstacle and instructor, shaping Deck's evolution. Deck and Thia's partnership develops in subtle, emotionally resonant ways. Moments of shared observation, mutual problem-solving, and silent coordination convey trust and cooperation. Their relationship illustrates the narrative's emphasis on symbiosis between beings of differing origins. Emotional stakes rise when environmental and predator threats intensify. Through these interactions, the audience witnesses the growth of mutual respect and interdependence. Midway through the story, Deck uncovers Weyland-Yutani remnants, including malfunctioning drones, experimental cages, and corrupted data logs. These discoveries highlight past human interference and corporate exploitation, providing both narrative context and environmental hazard. Deck interprets clues about predator behavior and ecosystem patterns to improve survival strategies. This reinforces the recurring theme that knowledge, observation, and adaptability are critical. The planet becomes a complex classroom where survival and intellect are inseparable. The narrative emphasizes strategic problem-solving during encounters with mid-tier predators. Deck analyzes movement patterns, environmental cues, and predator psychology. He sets intricate traps, manipulates terrain, and improvises to survive. Each encounter deepens audience appreciation of his adaptive intelligence. The sequences combine suspense, visual storytelling, and kinetic action for immersive engagement. Tessa's pursuit escalates, forcing Deck and Thia into extreme terrain. Collapsing cliffs, lava flows, and predator ambushes heighten stakes. Cinematography alternates between sweeping vistas and tight, intimate shots. Sound design amplifies suspense, with predator roars, mechanical whirs, and environmental hazards layered for tension. Deck's strategic thinking evolves under pressure, showcasing character growth. The apex predator's intelligence is increasingly evident, forcing Deck to integrate observation, traps, and environmental manipulation. The creature's biomechanical design, movement, and sensory acuity heighten suspense. Deck's adaptive tactics, using shadows, terrain, and psychological distraction, highlight ingenuity over strength. Each encounter builds narrative momentum toward the climactic confrontation. The predator functions as both physical threat and symbolic measure of personal growth. Thia's systems degrade, creating urgency and emotional resonance. She sacrifices resources to protect Deck, emphasizing loyalty, emergent morality, and strategic thinking. These moments humanize her character and heighten stakes. The narrative integrates action, suspense, and ethical reflection seamlessly. Deck's reliance on Thia underscores interdependence as a central theme. Deck encounters extreme environmental hazards, including seismic activity, toxic storms, and aggressive fauna. Each obstacle requires observation, creativity, and adaptive strategy. Cinematic techniques, lighting, camera movement, and color grading, highlight danger and character ingenuity. The sequences reinforce that survival depends on intelligence, emotional resilience, and collaboration. Deck's growth is mirrored in mastery of both terrain and strategy. Climactic sequences interweave environmental manipulation, predator confrontation, and strategic combat. Deck and Thia confront the apex predator in a vertical, multi-level arena of cliffs, caves, and unstable vegetation. The choreography combines suspense, intellect, and physical skill. Cinematography emphasizes scale, danger, and intimate character stakes. Thia's final acts reinforce the film's moral and philosophical themes. Deck neutralizes Tessa through environmental traps, strategy, and observation. These sequences exemplify intelligence triumphing over mechanical efficiency. The resolution emphasizes adaptive skill, moral courage, and the application of accumulated knowledge. Thia's sacrifice heightens emotional resonance. The narrative reinforces survival, cooperation, and the integration of learned skill with instinct. Deck's victory over the apex predator marks personal transformation. He emerges as a fully capable, confident, and self-aware Yautja. Cinematography frames his triumph against the alien landscape, emphasizing mastery and growth. Environmental storytelling signals respect from the planet itself. The narrative concludes action and character arcs simultaneously. The denouement portrays Dek reflecting on the journey, the planet, and Thaia's legacy. Themes of identity, honor, adaptation, and moral choice are reinforced. Cinematic composition highlights vast landscapes and intimate emotional beats. Dek's evolution represents the culmination of skill, intelligence, and ethical understanding. The film closes with a balance of action, reflection, and philosophical resonance. Jenna's ecosystem remains central throughout, with flora and fauna acting as dynamic storytelling elements. Each interaction informs character strategy and narrative progression. Environmental hazards reinforce tension, spectacle, and thematic weight. Dek's understanding of these systems exemplifies learning, adaptation, and growth. The planet functions as both antagonist and mentor. Cultural depth is expanded through Yautja rituals, political structures, and societal expectations. Dek's exile provides context for both personal and cultural stakes. Traditional hierarchies are contrasted with Jenna's unforgiving laws. Dek's growth challenges these structures and redefines honor. Narrative complexity is enhanced by blending survival, cultural insight, and personal evolution. Dek's journey leads him to a precarious ridge overlooking a valley shrouded in thick mist. The wind howls, carrying distant predator calls, while glowing spores drift through the air, illuminating the valley in an ethereal light. Each step is calculated, balancing agility with the knowledge gained from countless encounters. The terrain is unstable, with loose rocks and hidden pitfalls, forcing him to navigate with both caution and precision. This environment becomes a living puzzle, testing his intellect, patience, and survival instincts simultaneously. Thaya assists by scanning the terrain and interpreting residual Weyland-Yutani data logs. Her analytical input allows Dek to predict predator movement and environmental shifts. Their communication, a blend of gestures, shared glances, and intermittent verbal commands, reflects trust and coordination. The audience witnesses an evolving symbiosis, where organic intuition meets artificial intelligence. These interactions underscore the narrative's focus on cooperation and adaptive strategy. A pack of mid-sized predators suddenly emerges from the fog, their limbs elongated and bodies partially camouflaged by bioreflective skin. Dek observes their hunting pattern, noting synchronized movements and auditory signals. He sets a diversion using bioluminescent spores, leading the predators into a natural trap, a collapsing rock formation above a ravine. The camera alternates between close-ups of Dek's focused expression and wide shots of the predators reacting to environmental cues. This sequence highlights ingenuity and tactical foresight over brute force. Environmental hazards escalate as seismic tremors shake the valley, dislodging rocks and altering predator paths. Dek must adapt in real time, recalculating risks and exploiting momentary weaknesses in both predators and terrain. The film uses slow-motion sequences to accentuate tension, combined with immersive sound design of cracking stone and rumbling ground. Dek's ability to remain calm under pressure demonstrates mastery of both skill and emotional control. The narrative reinforces that survival requires continuous observation, learning, and adaptability. Thaya's system begins to fail intermittently, adding urgency to their navigation. Sparks fly from her exposed circuits, her predictive functions flickering in and out. Despite instability, she identifies optimal paths and alerts Dek to unseen threats. These moments create suspense while humanizing her synthetic character. Their bond deepens, demonstrating loyalty and emergent moral reasoning. The apex predator is gradually revealed through environmental hints, displaced foliage, broken branches, and deep, resonant roars. Its presence exerts psychological pressure, forcing Dek to weigh every action carefully. Close-up shots capture Dek's strategic calculations, while wide shots emphasize the predator's looming threat across the alien landscape. The suspense builds organically, illustrating intelligence and patience over sudden confrontation. Deck's evolution as a hunter becomes apparent as he anticipates and manipulates the predator's responses. Deck encounters ancient Yautja hunting grounds, marked by carvings and skeletal remains of past hunters. These discoveries provide insight into tradition, honor, and the harsh realities of exile. He interprets these lessons to refine his strategy, understanding that Jenna functions as a proving ground. The filmmakers integrate visual storytelling, with environmental cues revealing history without exposition. This deepens narrative layers, connecting personal growth to cultural heritage. Tessa's pursuit intensifies, her mechanical precision contrasting sharply with Deck's adaptive strategies. She uses sensors, auditory analysis, and predictive modeling to track movements. Deck counters with camouflage, misdirection, and environmental manipulation. Their confrontation highlights the philosophical tension between rigid programming and emergent intelligence. Action is infused with ethical and psychological stakes, elevating narrative complexity. Environmental hazards continue to shape encounters. Toxic mists, collapsing bridges, and aggressive flora create unpredictable threats. Deck uses these to his advantage, turning natural dangers into tactical tools. Each obstacle becomes a narrative device, reinforcing themes of ingenuity, adaptability, and symbiosis with the environment. The audience witnesses continuous character growth through high-stakes problem-solving. Mid-tier predator ambushes serve to test coordination between Deck and Thaya. Using patterns gleaned from prior observations, they evade and manipulate these predators into traps. Sequences blend suspense, environmental storytelling, and character development. Deck's increasing mastery over both creatures and terrain illustrates cumulative growth. Thaya's assistance underscores the narrative's emphasis on partnership and strategic synergy. Flashbacks to Yautja societal politics provide context for Deck's exile and personal stakes. Rituals, hierarchical disputes, and the value placed on size and strength inform his motivation. Deck's journey becomes both physical and symbolic, challenging societal norms. Cinematography contrasts past ceremonial precision with chaotic survival on Jenna. Themes of honor, resilience, and redefining strength are reinforced. Deck observes apex predator behavior, noting intelligence, adaptive tactics, and environmental awareness. Using traps, camouflage, and psychological insight, he begins to manipulate encounters. The suspense builds as each engagement tests intellect over strength. The predator becomes both adversary and mirror, reflecting Deck's evolution as hunter and strategist. Audience engagement deepens through visual tension, strategic maneuvering, and dynamic pacing. Thaya's moral reasoning emerges, as she chooses to prioritize Deck's survival over mission parameters. Her actions highlight emergent consciousness and ethical decision-making. Emotional resonance is amplified through cinematic framing, showing flickering sparks and hesitant gestures. Deck internalizes these lessons, integrating both tactical and moral insights. Their symbiosis exemplifies the blending of organic and artificial intelligence in survival. Environmental storytelling reaches its apex during a seismic storm, with rain, lightning, and tremors altering terrain. Predators adapt in real time, forcing Deck to anticipate both creature and environmental reactions. Cinematic techniques, slow motion, dynamic angles, and layered sound design heighten suspense. Deck's mastery of observation, learning, and improvisation is put to the ultimate test. Each decision reflects a balance between intellect, courage, and adaptability. Deck sets an intricate trap for the apex predator using environmental features, collapsible cliffs, bioluminescent distractions, and strategically placed acid pools. Close-ups capture his meticulous planning and execution, while wide shots emphasize scale and risk. The predator's adaptive responses increase tension, demonstrating its intelligence. Thaya provides critical guidance, her predictive calculations informing timing and placement. The narrative emphasizes strategy, anticipation, and symbiosis. Tessa confronts Deck mid-battle, her mechanical efficiency a relentless threat. Deck uses misdirection, terrain, and predator behavior to counter her precision. Their confrontation blends action with intellectual engagement, highlighting ingenuity over raw strength. The sequence maintains suspense through pacing, framing, and auditory cues. Deck's growth and adaptive thinking reach full expression. The apex predator's final engagement is both brutal and cerebral. Deck balances traps, timing, and environmental manipulation to exploit weaknesses. Close-ups reveal stress, focus, and tactical reasoning. Wide shots emphasize the scale of the alien ecosystem and danger. The climactic struggle reinforces themes of intelligence, perseverance, and learned skill. Thaia's final acts are sacrificial, diverting threats to ensure Deck's success. Sparks and flickering light signal system failure, imbuing emotional weight. Deck's survival is a direct result of her intervention. Moral and ethical themes culminate through her actions. The narrative integrates action, suspense, and philosophical resonance. Deck neutralizes Tessa using environmental advantage, strategic planning, and learned experience. Her defeat underscores intelligence and adaptability over mechanical precision. Deck's mastery reflects cumulative growth across trials, predators, and hazards. Cinematography emphasizes triumph, strategy, and environmental integration. Emotional and narrative arcs converge in resolution. The denouement portrays Deck surveying Jenna, reflecting on survival, growth, and Thaia's legacy. Themes of honor, identity, and moral courage are reinforced. Cinematic composition blends expansive vistas with intimate character focus. The narrative concludes action, suspense, and philosophical exploration. Deck's transformation embodies intelligence, resilience, and ethical growth. Jenna's ecosystem remains central, alive, and reactive. Predators, flora, and hazards continue to shape narrative and thematic progression. Deck's adaptive mastery demonstrates symbiosis with the environment. Visual and auditory storytelling highlight dynamic interaction. Survival is presented as a holistic challenge of intellect, emotion, and strategy. Yautja culture and politics provide context for exile, honor, and societal stakes. Deck's journey challenges tradition and personal expectation. Rituals and clan dynamics intersect with survival narrative. Themes of identity, courage, and adaptability are reinforced. Deck emerges as both a cultural and personal victor. The narrative concludes with reflection, triumph, and thematic resonance. Deck's mastery over predators, environment, and adversity is complete. Thaia's moral and ethical influence lingers. Jenna's alien landscape embodies beauty, danger, and respect for skill. The story emphasizes intelligence, cooperation, and evolution. Deck descends into a dense forest valley, the air thick with mist and the hum of alien insects. Each bioluminescent plant pulses rhythmically, casting shifting shadows that obscure lurking predators. He moves silently, scanning for visual cues, rustling leaves, displaced branches, and faint predator scents carried on the wind. Every step is a careful balance between speed and stealth, reflecting his evolved understanding of both terrain and adversary. The filmmakers emphasize suspense through tight framing and subtle sound design, immersing the audience in each calculated movement. Thaia's circuits flicker as she processes environmental data and predator behaviors simultaneously. Her analytical projections allow Deck to anticipate ambush patterns and identify safe routes. Sparks intermittently flare, visually signaling system instability, which heightens tension and underscores her emergent fragility. Despite this, her guidance remains critical, providing both strategy and moral support. Their partnership continues to embody the film's central theme of cooperation across species and technological boundaries. A sudden pack of mid-sized predators erupts from undergrowth, their camouflaged bodies blending with the glowing flora. Deck quickly improvises, using fallen branches and acidic sap to redirect the predators into a narrow ravine. The sequence employs dynamic camera angles, alternating between close-ups of Deck's intense focus and wide shots of predators reacting to environmental traps. Every motion is deliberate, reinforcing the narrative principle that intelligence and creativity are as vital as physical prowess. The audience is kept on edge, experiencing suspense and admiration simultaneously. Environmental hazards escalate as the terrain shifts violently during a minor seismic event. Rocks slide, trees sway dangerously, and hidden carnivorous plants snap at anything moving too close. Deck must continuously adapt, utilizing both speed and cognitive analysis to survive. Cinematography accentuates scale, danger, and fragility, making every choice visually impactful. This scene reinforces the planet itself as a character, a living entity testing the protagonist at every turn. Flashbacks interweave Yautja cultural rituals, showcasing Deck's early training and the political dynamics that led to his exile. The filmmakers contrast ceremonial precision with the chaotic unpredictability of Jenna, emphasizing the dissonance between societal expectation and natural law. These sequences provide both exposition and thematic depth, highlighting resilience, honor, and adaptability. Deck internalizes these lessons as he navigates threats, blending cultural understanding with practical survival skills. The narrative explores identity formation under extreme pressure. Thaya identifies remnants of a failed Weyland-Yutani expedition, a partially collapsed research outpost overrun by predators. Data logs reveal prior attempts to capture or manipulate local fauna, illustrating human hubris and negligence. Deck studies these remnants to anticipate predator behavior and environmental anomalies. The camera lingers on destroyed equipment and skeletal remains, creating a visual history that enriches the narrative. The sequence reinforces the central conflict between survival instincts and external interference. Tessa's tracking becomes increasingly precise, using auditory scanning, heat detection, and motion analysis. Deck responds with calculated maneuvers, exploiting shadows, terrain irregularities, and predator behavior. Their interactions are tense and cerebral, balancing kinetic action with strategic depth. The narrative juxtaposes mechanical efficiency against adaptive intelligence. Cinematic techniques, quick cuts, low angles, and motion-tracked camera work, maintain relentless suspense. Deck encounters a massive carnivorous plant that dominates a clearing, its tentacle-like appendages swaying with lethal grace. He studies its movement patterns, waiting for a precise moment to pass safely. Thaya provides real-time analysis of its reach and reactive speed, allowing Deck to exploit environmental weaknesses. This moment emphasizes the narrative's focus on observation and learning as critical survival tools. The predator and plant interactions reflect the ecosystem's complexity and inherent danger. A mid-tier predator unexpectedly emerges during Deck's crossing of a luminescent swamp. The creature's acid-resistant limbs make it a formidable opponent. Deck sets a series of decoys using bioluminescent flora and fallen debris, luring it into a natural trap formed by sinking quicksand and precarious roots. The filmmakers emphasize suspense through alternating perspectives, close-ups of Deck's strategic thought process intercut with wide shots of the predator ensnared. This sequence reinforces ingenuity over raw power. Thaya experiences intermittent system failures, forcing her to make critical decisions with incomplete data. Her emergent consciousness prioritizes Deck's survival over mission parameters. Sparks and flickering lights visually signal her vulnerability. Emotional weight is heightened as Deck observes her resilience, trusting her judgment despite increasing instability. Their symbiotic partnership is emphasized as both moral and tactical. The apex predator's first direct appearance occurs near a cliffside, where its shadow casts a terrifying silhouette across the misty landscape. Deck observes from cover, noting its intelligence, speed, and predatory intuition. He sets environmental traps while psychologically manipulating the predator, baiting it toward unstable terrain. Cinematography alternates between Deck's calculated movements and the predator's reactive stalking. This encounter establishes the apex predator as both a physical and psychological threat. Environmental hazards compound the narrative's tension. Acidic pools, electrified flora, and sudden seismic shifts require continuous adaptation. Deck uses these elements strategically, turning danger into advantage. Cinematic framing highlights both peril and protagonist ingenuity. Survival remains a complex interplay of observation, intellect, and courage. A secondary predator ambush forces Deck to engage in rapid tactical improvisation. Using terrain, decoys, and misdirection, he turns the predator's aggression against itself. Thaya monitors biological cues and environmental variables, enhancing precision. The sequence emphasizes adaptive learning under duress. Audience engagement is sustained through suspense, strategy, and dynamic visual storytelling. Deck discovers an ancient Yautja ceremonial site within a cavern illuminated by glowing mineral deposits. Symbols and skeletal remains provide insight into historical hunts, cultural ritual, and survival lessons. He interprets these markings to refine strategy for upcoming encounters. Flashbacks interweave, reinforcing cultural context and personal motivation. Themes of honor, resilience, and ingenuity converge. Tessa's confrontation escalates in a collapsing canyon. Rapid movement, environmental hazards, and predator interference create a high-stakes scenario. Deck leverages terrain, timing, and predator behavior to evade capture. Close-ups show stress, concentration, and decision-making under pressure. The narrative reinforces intelligence and adaptability as critical to survival. The apex predator engages Deck across vertical terrain, testing skill, observation, and improvisation. Environmental traps, bioluminescent decoys, and psychological manipulation are all deployed. Cinematography captures the scale and danger of the alien environment. Thaya contributes guidance despite system degradation. The sequence climaxes in a multi-layered, visually striking confrontation. Thaya sacrifices herself to save Deck, highlighting emergent moral reasoning and loyalty. Sparks and flickering circuits visually underscore her fragility. Deck's survival is directly facilitated by her intervention. Emotional resonance heightens narrative depth. Thematic emphasis on cooperation, sacrifice, and emergent morality reaches its peak. Deck neutralizes Tessa using environmental advantage and strategic insight. Her defeat demonstrates intelligence over brute mechanical efficiency. Cinematic techniques emphasize timing, perspective, and tension. Deck's mastery of the environment and predator behavior culminates in this victory. The narrative synthesizes action, strategy, and philosophical reflection. The denouement depicts Deck standing atop a cliff, surveying Jenna's hazardous yet beautiful landscape. Themes of personal growth, honor, and adaptation are reinforced. Cinematic framing emphasizes isolation, mastery, and triumph. Deck embodies the convergence of intelligence, courage, and moral choice. Environmental storytelling signals respect from the alien world itself. Jenna's ecosystem is portrayed as a reactive, intelligent environment. Predator, flora, and hazard interactions inform narrative progression. Deck's symbiotic relationship with the ecosystem demonstrates evolved mastery. Visual storytelling communicates environmental danger and narrative depth. Survival is holistic, requiring intellect, emotional resilience, and adaptive thinking. Yautja cultural elements interlace with the narrative through ritualistic flashbacks and contextual lore. Deck's exile, societal challenges, and eventual triumph reflect personal and cultural stakes. Tradition is tested against ingenuity, perseverance, and moral choice. Cinematic composition integrates flashbacks seamlessly with present action. The narrative emphasizes personal growth as both culturally and individually significant. Deck cautiously enters a narrow canyon filled with bioluminescent moss, where small predatory insects swarm in dense clusters. Their rapid, darting movements are difficult to track, forcing him to slow his pace and carefully observe patterns. He improvises by tossing reflective debris to distract the swarm, allowing a safe path forward. Close-up shots capture tension and focus, while wide angles emphasize the canyon's claustrophobic danger. These minor encounters continue to reinforce the film's theme that observation and intelligence are essential for survival. A mid-sized predator attempts an ambush in a misty ravine, using reflective camouflage to blend into the terrain. Deck quickly identifies a weak point and manipulates the environment, causing loose boulders to collapse onto the creature. Cinematography alternates between suspenseful close-ups and expansive shots, highlighting danger and clever strategy. Yautja provides crucial predictive guidance before her systems falter completely. This encounter showcases learned skill, adaptability, and the cumulative effect of prior experience. Environmental hazards escalate as a sudden acid rainstorm sweeps through the valley. Bioluminescent flora reacts violently, emitting toxic spores and obscuring visibility. Deck adapts by using natural overhangs and strategically placed debris to shield himself while continuing forward. Sound design emphasizes dripping acid, hissing plants, and distant predator roars, enhancing immersion. These sequences blend spectacle with narrative reinforcement of resilience, observation, and adaptive thinking. Deck navigates a collapsing bridge over a lava-fed ravine while evading a minor predator. Each step requires precise timing, balance, and calculation, with close-ups emphasizing the tension in every movement. The predator's coordination tests Deck's strategic ingenuity, pushing him to anticipate behavior and exploit environmental weaknesses. Cinematic pacing intensifies suspense, alternating slow motion with rapid cuts. This scene exemplifies the narrative principle of intellect over brute strength. Yautja makes one final act of guidance, directing Deck through a hazardous zone filled with electrified flora. Sparks and short circuits visually signal her fading consciousness. Deck applies the information in real time, avoiding deadly contact and setting traps for pursuing predators. Her sacrifice emphasizes the narrative's focus on loyalty, emergent morality, and strategic cooperation. Emotional resonance peaks as Deck processes the loss while achieving survival. The apex predator approaches the final confrontation with Deck on unstable cliffs above a molten river. Each movement is calculated and deliberate, with environmental hazards adding complexity to the engagement. Deck uses a combination of camouflage, time traps, and psychological manipulation to gain an advantage. Wide shots convey scale and danger, while close-ups highlight intensity and character focus. The battle is both physical and cerebral, culminating in a strategic, visually stunning sequence. Minor predators continue to interfere during the final apex predator battle, adding unpredictability and dynamic tension. Deck uses each distraction to his advantage, turning chaos into a tactical opportunity. Cinematic framing emphasizes multi-layered danger, while sound design captures overlapping predator cues and environmental hazards. These sequences reinforce the thematic core: intelligence, adaptability, and observation surpass raw strength. Deck's mastery is evident in his anticipation, reaction, and innovation. Tessa attempts one last intervention, but Deck's cumulative knowledge of terrain, predator behavior, and mechanical precision allows him to outmaneuver her. The final sequence is a choreography of intellect, environment, and skill. Sparks, debris, and collapsing terrain add cinematic spectacle, creating high-stakes immersion. Close-ups show calculated focus, wide shots convey epic scale. The confrontation ends with Deck standing victorious, physically and psychologically transformed. The denouement emphasizes reflection and philosophical resonance. Deck surveys Jenna's diverse, treacherous landscapes, recognizing both its dangers and its beauty. Themes of identity, resilience, and moral evolution are reinforced as he contemplates survival, loss, and achievement. Environmental storytelling frames his mastery of terrain, predators, and strategic thought. Jenna itself appears to acknowledge his growth, signaling harmony with the world. Yautja's legacy is highlighted through subtle cues, residual lights from her systems, environmental cues she influenced, and Deck's acknowledgement of her sacrifice. Her emergent morality and loyalty underscore the narrative's focus on cooperation and ethical development. Deck internalizes her lessons, combining learned intelligence with strategic and moral insight. The narrative concludes with both action and emotional closure. Audience reflection on intelligence, courage, and morality is encouraged. Yautja cultural elements are woven into the resolution. Deck's survival challenges societal norms and redefines honor. Rituals, hierarchical expectations, and personal growth converge in his reflection. Flashbacks interlace seamlessly with the present, highlighting the contrast between tradition and adaptive survival. Thematic depth is enriched, offering insight into identity, cultural legacy, and moral evolution. Cinematic composition emphasizes balance between spectacle and intimate reflection. Lighting highlights alien beauty and danger, while soundscapes layer predator calls, environmental hazards, and atmospheric tension. Camera movement underscores scale, danger, and character focus simultaneously. Deck's perspective is central, allowing audiences to experience both suspense and cognitive engagement. Visual storytelling remains integral throughout, merging spectacle with thematic meaning. Final sequences show the ecosystem as alive, reactive, and intelligent. Predator, flora, and hazards continue to interact dynamically, signaling respect for Deck's mastery. The narrative emphasizes that survival is a combination of intellect, observation, and emotional resilience. Jenna serves as both adversary and mentor. The environment mirrors the protagonist's internal growth and strategic evolution. The story concludes with philosophical reflection, intelligence, adaptability, and moral choice define true strength. Deck's journey illustrates that cooperation, observation, and resilience surpass raw power. Survival requires understanding environment, predator, and self. Moral and ethical reflection is inseparable from physical achievement. The narrative leaves audiences with a holistic understanding of the protagonist's evolution. Deck's final perspective is one of mastery, self-realization, and cautious respect for Jenna. Themes of honor, cultural identity, and personal growth converge. He embodies the balance between intelligence, courage, and ethical choice. Cinematic framing reinforces triumph and reflection. The story ends with a sense of both closure and ongoing vigilance, a hero tempered by experience and awareness.